On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Kleberg Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. From Austin Film Festival, this is On Story, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. This week's On Story, 500 Days of Summer writer Scott Neustadter and Man Up writer Tess Morris.
I think what she did so brilliantly was she managed to make everything personal but universal, which is the ultimate thing to be as a writer. I look back now and think, I think whenever you find her, that's your moment. It's like, that's your cute meet with her.
In this episode, Scott Neustadter and Tess Morris discuss one of the greatest modern romantic comedy writer-directors, Nora Ephron.
Nora's family motto was, "Everything is copy." If you've ever been a journalist, you know what that means. And what she meant by that was that everything that happens to you, the tragic and the beautiful, the ridiculous, all of that is material. And she turned those things into When Harry Met Sally and Sleepless in Seattle and Silkwood and other works that continue to make us laugh and cry and think. And so I think the first thing that I'd like to ask is, where is that personal connection for you all?
My first exposure was When Harry Met Sally. I was 11 or 12, and I remember, I might get verklempt talking about it, but I walked out of there and I was like, that's my and I was a kid, and all my friends were into escapist Star Wars-y movies and all the Spielberg stuff and action, adventure, and I was not. And I realized what I liked was these personal stories, the love of the just real people, movies that I could relate to, and not the escapist things that everyone else was into. Anyway, that really sort of began my where my voice was going to be, and I owe a lot to this movie and to her writing for that. So
I came to her a little later in life, and then had that exact feeling of like, oh, this is my this is what I've been trying to like aspire to and write to for a long time. And also the everything is copy thing that Greg, which is her obviously very famous quote, but whenever I pitch anything, I always start to go, so, you know, there's this woman, and then I always go, it's me. Because it's just easier, you know, because it is usually 75% me. And I think what she did so brilliantly was she managed to make everything personal but universal, which is the ultimate thing to be as a writer. So I think once I realized, like you, like, oh, this is the stuff that people want to actually write about and are interested in, and I don't have to, you know, and I was watching a lot of John Hughes movies in my sort of, when Harry Met Sally came out. So I look back now and think, I think whenever you find her, that's your moment. It's like, that's your cute meet with her.
She said, I try to write parts for women that are as complicated and interesting as women actually are. So I'm wondering if there are some women characters that we're going to look at today that sort of stand out for you as sort of exemplary, and if her writing about women has helped to shape some of the women that you've created.
The first time I saw When Harry Met Sally, and I thought, I saw Sally Albright and finally felt like, oh, there I am. Great. There's like a slightly neurotic, kind of annoying, but you know, she's genuine with it all. And I think obviously there's been a slight kind of strange trajectory from that character. But like, I also like love Katharine Hepburn. Whenever I see anything with Katharine Hepburn, and I think, oh yeah, she's like another person that I on screen really responded to. And I think that what Nora did so well was she always had a central axiom in her movie. She was always posing a question, you know, and obviously we all know in Harry Met Sally, can men and women be friends? But from that, every single female character had an opinion, you know? They all had, in any scene, she's always coming, you know that there's something behind everything that they are talking about. So I think she was able to write women as people, and that's really, I think, the best way to write women, because we are also people.
We fell in love in high school.
Yeah, we were high school sweethearts.
But then after our junior year, his parents moved away.
But I never forgot her.
You never forgot me.
No, her face was burned on my brain. And it was 34 years later that I was walking down Broadway and I saw her come out of Toffanetti's.
And we both looked at each other, and it was just as though not a single day had gone by.
She was just as beautiful as she was at 16.
He was just the same. He looked exactly the same.
When I was 11 or 12 and I saw it, I thought they pulled people off the street, and it felt very documentary and real. And then, I mean, obviously it's not. When you get the script and you read the script, she wrote all these things, and of course she did. I don't know why I didn't know that. But why do that? Because this is the thing I'm interested in. The romantic comedy, of which When Harry Met Sally definitely is, there are obligatory scenes, right? There are things you know have to be in this movie. This is a choice, and I find it very interesting, and I think it's really, really smart.
Anyone who follows me on social media will know my obsession and my friendship with Billy Murnett, who wrote a book called Writing the Romantic Comedy. So he wrote if you are interested in writing romantic comedy, you must read that book at all costs. And we now have a podcast together, sidebar. But what he says, which I always really love, is that when you meet a couple who have something interesting going on, he always says, ask them how they met. Because that's what a romantic comedy kind of is, because, you know, it's the courtship. So these two people have a whole movie in them as well that came before and comes afterwards. And I think, like, I love hearing people's stories of how they met. So this opening sequence is a dream to me because they're clearly based on real stories as well. And I think it's very smart and clever to do it in slight sort of snapshots as well. Because then you also know what this movie is going to be about now. And that's also very clever. Subtly, she's saying, here's how all these people met. Now we're going to watch a movie about how two other people met. So it's thematic, it's subtextual, it's all the things that you need, and also fundamentally very, very funny. But
So
that little squeeze at the end is like, do I want to stay
And
there?
and so the trajectory is you're now going to see something that's not simple.
Exactly.
And if you think back to
True.
these guys, you are watching this realizing, I bet their story wasn't that simple either.
Yeah,
I bet you
totally.
they've got a whole movie in them as well.
Yeah.
And it's like...
She probably saw him across the room and thought, I am never marrying that man.
Right. And I think also the other thing that it does is these are not, they don't look like movie star actors. That's you, that's me, it's your parents, it's your grandparents, it's literally everyone.
Oh, I wish that was my parents. They are great.
So, but doesn't that set you off on this, like, you're gonna watch something and you're gonna relate to it.
Yeah.
These are you. You know, and at the end, when it's Harry and Sally and they're telling their story,
Well, that's the ultimate payoff as
it's
well.
amazing.
You go, oh, that's why they were there at the beginning. The Sleepless in Seattle template, by the way, is crazy. It's a rom-com about two people that don't meet until the end of the movie. So it's a big risk. And I believe that while she was directing it towards the end, she thought, are we actually going to get away with this? Are people going to watch an hour and a half of two people not meeting? So this is a cute meet that is a virtual cute meet, you know? Yeah. So that's why it's an interesting scene, I think.
Marcia, or should I call you Dr. Fieldstone?
Dr. Marcia.
Dr.
Dr. Marcia.
I don't mean to be rude.
Oh, and I don't want to invade your privacy.
Oh, sure you do.
Go on, Sam. I'm listening. Sam?
We had a pretty tough time there at first.
Mm-hmm.
But we're dealing with it. And Jonah and I will get along just fine again as soon as I break his radio.
I have no doubt that you're a wonderful father. You know, you can tell a lot from a person's voice.
You certainly can.
But something must be missing if Jonah still feels that you're under a cloud.
Structurally, obviously, they're having their cute meet on screen, but not together. And she does that very simply as well by, you know, that feeling of like when they say, yeah, you do it at the same time, there's the bing moment of like, oh, we said the same thing at the same time. That means we're destined to be together. It's a very common assumption. But what I think, watching it again, you realise also the choices she makes in direction also really contribute to the structural payoffs in it, because they are both on the phone. Like, someone else might have just written that scene, he hands the phone to his son and then he can't hear. But because they're both listening and they're both aware, they are forced to be much more honest than they might have been otherwise. So she's giving us a lot of information there. She's saying to us, this man, and she's managing to make bereavement funny, you know, which is also a real skill. So I think you need to, it's the ultimate way of introducing two characters and giving us all the information. She's a romantic, he's a cynic. It's the usual classic sort of setup. And like later on, they go on to, you know, they both peel the apple in the, you know, all the different things. And Meg Ryan's character is with someone at this point as well. So there's all of that going on. And it just looks beautiful. I love when they walk towards each other on the phone like that. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Tess, I remember for a piece you wrote for The Guardian about romantic comedies, you said that I'm interested in what makes people happy and what makes people sad. And you were writing specifically there about romantic comedy, but that's at the core of drama for us.
Yeah, and I think that I've spent ever since I wrote Man Up, I've become like the defender of the romantic comedy. And guess what, guys? It's alive again.
So I wonder if we could talk a little bit about something like Sleepless in Seattle or When Harry Met Sally, and talk about structure and what Nora might have to teach us about the second act. And how to get from this great beginning and the meet cute and whatever to the great moment on the skyscraper at the end. How do we keep the audience's interest while at the same time, you know, putting up the stop sign and going, hey, there's more stuff that has to happen?
I mean, she was the master of the midpoint. So I think a good example of her greatest midpoint is the orgasm scene. Because it's a metaphorical turning point. It's not a huge, big, dramatic scene. What it is it's the first time that Harry sees Sally in a sexual way. So we don't really know, like, you know, we don't know quite what's going on. And obviously the famous story is that it was actually Meg that said, why don't I actually do the orgasm? Originally it was scripted as just her talking about it. And then further to that, the famous I'll have what she's having was actually Rob Wright, you know, like Billy Crystal's line rather. So I love it for turning the story in a totally different direction, but not in a huge plot-driven way. Because we're often told you have to have these huge, you know, devices that occur in the second act that send the story in the opposite direction. And in the romantic comedy, what you need is an emotional different direction. So I think the orgasm scene is the perfect example of that.
Oh, God. Oh.
I'll have what she's having.
What was your midpoint in 500 Days of Summer?
Technically,
Remind me.
the high, there's it's told out of order. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I have seen it.
And so the midpoint is really early, but the sort of turning point is they get trapped on a train together out of town, which was not originally scripted. And it was the one note we got from Fox Searchlight, which was, there's nothing in this that even pretends to be a 3-act structure. I need to have
something.
I need to have something here that teases that they might get back together, because that's what these movies do. And so we came up with this idea of like them being trapped on a train going to a wedding where they would only know each other, really. And they were reminded of all the good in their relationship, and he leaves there thinking, I've got a chance. And the audience leaves there thinking, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then, wow, do we shut the door on that?
Your ultimate quest or mission when you're writing a romantic comedy is, how the do I keep these two people together without getting them together? So your job is to always be finding these things, because at any given moment, a character will go, I'm out, and then the movie ends. Yeah. So you're always trying to find ways.
Or worse, I love you, and
I will love you,
and then the movie ends.
Like, then the movie ends.
Right.
Yeah. Although, you know, arguably you could start there and then, you know, there are structural ways you can like mess with that.
We'll talk about one of them.
We will talk about them, Scott.
It's an interesting. Those are the two. It is keeping the yo-yo.
Yes, exactly.
And we've got a scene from Silkwood that we're going to take a look at. And this is the scene from early-ish in the film where we have the contamination in the nuclear plant. And like it's super scary. And one of the reasons that I picked this one is it sort of stands in some ways in contrast to a lot of the things that we think we know about Nora Ephron, because this is a really powerful and dramatic film.
This is all about the human part of the crisis and the catastrophe, and that's what she does so perfectly, which is these women and just those scenes of them dealing are so much more interesting and dramatic than the danger and the terror that's going on around them.
Whenever I rewatch that movie, I am always really struck by the fact that she is such an unapologetic female character. She is kind of unlikable many times during the movie, and she sort of kind of takes no prisoners and really it's from her point of view pretty much the entire time. And when was the last time you saw a movie like that, you know? Like, it's very unusual to have like a female at the center of it that is not that likable, that no one believes as well, you know? And that she doesn't have to have, you know, she doesn't got children, she's got a dysfunctional relationship, and she lives with, you know, Cher is great in this movie, by the way. So I think it's a very good reminder of how, again, she is a person in this film who is suffering from something that is, I mean, that just the way that buzzer goes off and the way Meryl Streep sinks down the wall, whether that was in the script or direction, you know, it's always they gave her enough to even consider doing that. And the big Hollywood version of that would be a lot bigger. It's such a quiet scene, and yet it's the moment where everything changes in that film.
Tess, you picked our next scene, which is the short and really beautiful scene from Julie and Julia. Could you tell us a little bit about it and what sort
Julie
of
and
brought
Julia,
it to the
yeah,
forefront?
it was her last movie. I think it often gets forgotten in her canon. She was quite ill when she was making it as well, but was a real, you know, like carried on through. I think she died a few years later after it came out. But I think that it's a forgotten kind of gem because it's actually a very big glossy movie about food and, you know, and everything, but underneath it all it's really a movie about a marriage, and the scene that I picked is an emotional scene that tells a lot of story but also gives you a really just beautiful insight into her relationship with her husband, and that's really what the whole movie tracks. There's all the cooking, there's all the chicken, there's all the Paris or whatever, but really it's about those two.
Is good, isn't it?
Very, from your sister.
I'm going to send this recipe to Avis. I'm very excited about it. I think it's a breakthrough.
Well, it tastes like it.
And oh. Dorothy is pregnant. Oh. Oh, Paul, isn't that wonderful?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you know, like, again, she's making a really sad thing about someone who's not able to have children and has missed her window. She's managing to make that emotional, but also, you know, there's humor and there's levity in it. And it's not a big scene. They're not saying, oh my God, I love you still. It's just that little, even just the hug at the end and the I'm very happy is the perfect way. And they don't have to go any further. You know exactly what that scene is about.
And Tucci is
I love
not
him.
doing, I would imagine other actors like saying,
Yes.
can I have a line, or can I want to add something, or give me something to say, or he is really playing off it in like the perfect sort of way.
And also it's really about her. She had 3 marriages in total herself, and this one is very much like a love letter to her last and greatest husband by all accounts.
So what can we learn from, like, because this is a really short scene, but it takes us like across this whole range of emotion. And what we're just also hearing is that it's not overplayed by any means. So we get all of this stuff with like a minimum of effort, seemingly, which of course means that there's an incredible amount of effort involved with it. What can we learn from this scene about storytelling?
Sometimes less is more.
Yeah, and I imagine, I don't know what about you, but when I would always, you would write the first version of this scene, which would have all the information, you know? And then you'd be like, oh, that's a little bit on the nose. And then you'd write the second version and be like, still a little bit too much. And then finally you'd be like, oh my God, all I need to do is have her open a letter and say her sister is pregnant, and then a hug. You know, like that's how I would like to think she got to it. And that's a really good way to sometimes work as a writer, to just write the most obvious thing at first, because to get to the subtext immediately is you know, a hard task.
And I think her husband is doing a lot of the heavy lifting there by just getting her, not asking questions, not having to press her for information. Just know, like, what does it say about their relationship that he doesn't have to say anything.
Might never be cross or try to be boss, but they wouldn't do. For nobody else gave me a thrill. With all your faults, I love you still. It has to be.
I've been doing a lot of thinking. The thing is, I love you.
What?
I love you.
How do you expect me to respond to this?
How about you love me too?
How about I'm leaving?
It's a very classical setup. She's in a, you know, it's New Year's Eve. He's running. The music is playing. She's in a gown. And the scene starts where most of them end, which is he gets to finally say, I love you. And in this case, that's where it begins. And it's kind of like, you know, nope. And he has to sell what he loves about her. And it's like, it's all the annoyances. It's everything he you know, he's not complimenting her. But then they have this amazing, she doesn't say I love you back, she says I hate you, which is awesome. But you know what she's really saying, and they have their great sort of moment. And then he goes right back to the Harry bullshit, talking about Old Lang Syne and what does it mean and all that stuff, and he's in the guy he was in the beginning. And she, what does the song mean? She doesn't really know, but she's like, it has something to do with old friends. And the last line of this movie is friends. And in a romantic scene, that's not a word you hear often. But when I was watching it again, I realized kind of like, you leave the theater with such confidence that relationship is gonna work, that they are gonna be together forever.
I'm not so sure.
Really?
But
I really do. And the reason why, I believe, is because of the friend thing. Is because that's what it is. They're old friends, and the relationship will work because it's built on that foundation that we've watched this entire movie. Decades of getting to know each other and loving all the things that you don't like about the person.
The first time we met, we hated each other.
No, you didn't hate me. I hated you. The second time we met, you didn't even remember me.
I did too. I remembered you. The third time we met, we became friends.
We were friends for a long time.
And then we weren't.
And then we fell in love. 3 months later, we got married.
It only took 3 months.
12 years and 3 months.
We had a really wonderful wedding.
It really was a
It was great. We had this enormous coconut cake.
Huge coconut cake with the tears, and there was this very rich chocolate sauce on the side.
Right, because not everybody likes it on the cake because it makes it very soggy.
Particularly the coconut soaks up a lot of that stuff, so it's important to keep it on the side.
Right.
You've been watching Deconstructing Nora Ephron on Story. On Story is part of a growing number of programs in Austin Film Festival's On Story project, including the On Story PBS series, now streaming online, the On Story radio program, the On Story podcast, and the On Story book series, available where books are sold. To find out more about On Story and Austin Film Festival, visit onstory.tv or austinfilmfestival.com.